Rail Up, the future mobility podcast with innovators and leaders of the ecosystem. Presented by Sebastian Sperker.
Our guest today is Andrés de León, the CEO of the company HyperloopTT. We will delve into the fascinating world of this future mode of transport. Andrés will share with us the enormous potential of Hyperloop technology and explain why this approach will be an important pillar of our tomorrow's mobility for both passengers and cargo. We will also discuss the major milestones of the company, the upcoming 800 million project in Italy, and the innovative approach to building a new company in the 21st century. I'm delighted to have Andrés with us today, live from Dubai. Let's start. Hi, Andrés, and welcome to RAILUP, the podcast. And I start my question or my podcast always with the same question. How would you describe yourself? You're rather a leader or an innovator?
That's a not easy question to ask. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me here, Sebastian. But I definitely would describe myself more like a leader, I like innovation. Innovation is in my character, and, and especially innovation is in the DNA of our company, HyperloopTT. But I would like to think in myself like somebody that helps all our innovators that we have in our company to arrive to the point that we need to arrive.
Thank you. And let's start our journey. Probably for the most of us, the concept of the Hyperloop sounds super futuristic and not really fitting in our time. Since Elon Musk announced the deal and the Hyperloop competition, a big hype started. But so far, it seems more like a cutting-edge technology rather than a new mode of transport in our century. But just recently, the region of Venice published a tender to construct a Hyperloop connection between the city of Venice and Padua with an investment over 800 million. And your company won the tender. So Andrés, let's share with us your opinion why Hyperloop is needed.
I think that Hyperloop is not just a nice-to-have system. It's really a need. Basically, the three main pillars of Hyperloop and why we really believe that Hyperloop is a need for this new world of transportation and why we believe that transportation is broken. The three main pillars is sustainability, is comfort and speed, and it's also financial viability. Okay. Starting by the comfort, when you take an airplane today, you cannot go from city center to city center. And anybody that has experienced the possibility of taking the high-speed rail, you see the advantage of that. No, you don't have to be 1 hour before in the airport. You don't need to, to have to be in a traffic jam. So that's clear. But the problem then when you arrive to high-speed rail is that it's not fast enough. Okay, and the fact that it's not fast enough limits clearly the demand. Okay, when you connected cities from 500 kilometers away. Everybody takes the train, nobody takes the airplane. But then when you want to connect Madrid to Paris, nobody's going to stay 5-6 hours in a train. There is a lot of studies that show that, when the time of the travel is more than 3 hours, basically the people take the plane. And with Hyperloop, we solved that problem. We can connect all the big European cities or North American cities, within 2 to 3 hours. Okay, major cities within 2 to 3 hours. And then you have the financial viability. It's true that the airlines make money in general, but that's not the case in the train systems. Okay, Spain is the second country with more kilometers of high-speed rail in the world. It's the one with the lowest capex per kilometer in the Western world. The line that is more successful is Madrid-Barcelona. Madrid-Barcelona has a payback period of 125 years. So if you take out the subsidies and you put the P&L of the infrastructure operator Adif and the transportation operator Renfe, you have 125 years of payback period. What does it mean? It means that basically it's heavily subsidized by taxpayers. It's paid with the budget of the countries. In all the analysis that we have done, we arrived to 20 to 25 years payback period for the Hyperloop. in the feasibility study that we did for Great Lakes, in the feasibility study that we did for the connection of Abu Dhabi to Alain. And there is a big rail infrastructure operator that has done a study that they even talk about 10 to 15 years, okay?
Without subsidies, right?
Without subsidies. So basically, this is a game changer. That means that basically any private company could finance this. Any toll road company based on a concession could finance this without support and without subsidies, or any public company could develop a system without having to rely on the budget of the country. And then the third pillar is sustainability. No, at the end, we know that aviation, we have a huge problem, with emissions. In Hyperloop, high-speed rail is great, but it's not as good as like, because the energy consumption grows exponentially. If you want to go more than 330 kilometers per hour, yes, you can do it, but the energy consumption is crazy. So we have developed a system that is that from the point of view of CO2 emissions, from the point of view of operations, we are CO2 emissions neutral, we are emissions neutral from the point of view of operations. So basically, we generate more energy that we consume, and that energy that we generate it based on solar panels, based on renewable energy. We are taking advantage of the right way, to put solar panels on top of the infrastructure. And we have been also working very, very hard to reduce drastically the consumption of energy of the Hyperloop system. So altogether, in every study that we have done, we generate between 5 to 15% more energy that we consume.
15 more energy than?
Yeah, that the energy that the system needs. Of course, there are moments that you are connected to the grid. It's not a self-sustained system without the grid. You are connected to the grid. There are moments that you need energy from the grid, but then there are moments that you can give energy to the grid, and at the end, you can generate that 5 to 15% more energy than the energy that you are going to consume.
If you would have the possibility to even generate energy, that would be like even more like a game changer doing that. Can you also explain a little bit your company, HyperloopTT, and TT for the audience? It's the acronym for transport technology. It was founded back in 2013. Can you give us a bit like an overview about the history and the major steps for HyperloopTT in the last years and the major achievements?
Yeah, when Elon Musk went public and he said that he had this idea and he put this idea in the spotlight and he said that he had no time to develop it, we had an incubator funded with the help of NASA and Gilman Institute to build companies in a completely different ways, to build companies using crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing means people working in exchange of equity of the project. So the people is working, we give them stock options, and we retain the IP that has been generated in exchange of that equity of the project. So we thought that this project was a great test for our platform. We put it in the platform. Immediately, we had like 200 people around the world that they wanted to develop the Hyperloop. And long story short, during these 10 years, we have had more than 800 contributors around the world contributing on developing this, and more than 50 companies that has also been collaborating in exchange of equity of the project. Today, more than 50%, in a fully diluted basis, more than 50% of the company equity is in the hands of the crowd, of the people and companies that has been collaborating and developing.
So the crowd is universities, companies, private people, and
yeah, all the institutions, companies, and people that has been collaborating. So Harvard Business School defined it as like the new way of building companies. No? In addition to that, now that we are in the implementation phase, we also wanna, we wanna license the technology to the infrastructure operators and to the transportation operators. We are a technology company. We are not an infra company. We are not a transportation company. So our model will allow us to deploy the systems worldwide without having to deploy ourselves that capabilities, that capital, and all of that. So the same way that we have developed the technology with the help of experts and people and companies, that are experts in their fields, now we are going to deploy commercially the technology with companies that are experts in their fields, and they have all the means and all the capabilities, to deploy the technology. The company has had, I define 3 different phases, I would say that at the beginning was everything about the technology, demonstrating that the technology was possible, showing to all the skeptics around the world, that this was a real possibility. And we developed our test track in Toulouse, where we did a lot of testing, and also we developed a lot of test benches around the world, in Torino, in other places, And then very, very soon, because we had this pragmatic approach, we understood that this was not about trying to develop new technologies only. It was also about applying actual technologies to the Hyperloop system. And that, together with the expertise of all the people that has been collaborating with us, people with 20 years experience, or companies that are experts in their fields, has allowed us to develop much faster the technology. And then we went to a second phase where was basically about the product. How do we transform this technology in product? We have we developed the Hyperloop passenger systems. We developed the Hyperport in collaboration with the Port of Hamburg, with the operator of the Port of Hamburg, with HADA. That is the Hyperloop of containers. And finally, like 6 months ago, we presented to the world our concept for the fast trade, for the parcels, ULDs, and pallets, express freight concept. Okay. And now we are in the third phase. As you were saying at the beginning, Sebastian, we have this project that we won we won it in a consortium together with Leonardo. We build the first 10 kilometers of an Hyperloop system. So we are in the project phase. In this linear infrastructure, you always need to adapt your product to the project. It's not exactly the same train, or the same capsule in our case, the one that goes with some alignment to other, with one project to other. And we are in that phase now, developing that project that will be the first 10 kilometers to be built, with the idea of later on doing an extension, of course.
And what I find very interesting in our previous talks is that the way you founded the company, it's a quite new and innovative way. HyperloopTT started with a crowdfunding element. So individual people, companies, universities are participating together to develop the needed the technology. And that input generates, like, let's say, a value, and will then convert it into equity later. So that's a really new way, right?
Yeah, in fact, it's not crowdfunding, it's crowdsourcing, just to clarify. So people doesn't put money, they put effort, they put expertise, they put not. And yes, has been a very, very successful. If I have to be something that I'm really proud about, it is how we have developed this company, in a completely different way. I really like what we are doing, but I also like, and we like a lot, all the management in HyperloopTT, the way that we are doing it, integrating the people, being able to create a team in days, when we need new people for something, we have a challenge in some area of the technology, we can create a team immediately. We have our teams that has been working together for more than 8 years, some of them, working in different areas. So it's really appealing the way that we have done it. It's not easy, okay, because building a new way of transportation is not easy. When people tell me that we are building a unicorn, I always say that what we have built is a camel, to be through the desert. And you need a lot of resilience, You need resilient people, because, again, this is not the typical startup that you start and in 3 years you can do an exit or something like that. No, this is really, really deep tech, and you need time, you need effort. You don't have always the support of the financial world, especially the last 3 years, 4 years, was really, really difficult to raise funds too for these kind of projects. But anyway, here we are. We have been able to find this project. This project is very, very important for us for 2 reasons. It's the first time that we are having revenues coming from a project. But second, and very important, we don't need to raise 200 million, 300 million to create a prototype. This is going to be the prototype. And it's been paid in this frame of a PPI, of a public-private project for innovation in Italy.
Now it's for me like really fantastic. I just read it at your homepage. Basically, the tool how you organize the whole collaborative innovation approach. It's called Lucy. I can imagine that this is also quite hard work to organize all the right people to really manage the right people at the right place to work on the right topic, right? Or is this something which is much easier than expected?
I've seen that it's not easier, or it's not much easier or much difficult, that managing a normal company, okay? But definitely it's different, okay? Has some pros and some cons, no? The pros is that everybody is so motivated. Nobody that is working in exchange of equity of the project, as you can imagine, you need to motivate them because they are the first one that they are putting 100% of skin in the game, no? The cons is that sometimes, you need to generate a way that when some people cannot do it because, imagine that they have 2 weeks or 3 weeks that they have too much work in their normal job, in the job that help them to pay the mortgage every month, so it's more difficult to cap their attention, or they need to that. And you need to be able to adapt the size of the teams, the focus of the teams, adapt to the different resources that you have in each moment, no? But has also great advantage because imagine that you are a startup and you want to hire one guy that has been, 20 years working in Siemens, in NASA, in one of the big companies in the world, okay? And you go to him and you make him an incredible economical offer, but going to work in a startup, not everybody wants to work in a startup and take the risk, okay? So even if you have put a good check in front of him, a good payroll check in front of him, maybe he doesn't want to do it because, has been 20 years working in a company and he's very stable there. But you go there and you tell him, no, okay, you continue working with that and you just give me 10 hours a week of your time where you are going to help me and all that. So you are so you have access to people that in other ways impossible to have in a startup environment, no? And the same when you work with companies, no? When you are working with a company, because we duplicate this model from people. We started with just people and then we went to companies, okay, too. And you take advantage of their knowledge, their capabilities, their expertise, even their internal procedures, that to manage the teams, So it's very, very powerful. It's more than collaborative engineering. It's true that the automotive industry was doing this for a while, but this is like a new standard, You don't even tell them what to do. You first, when you approach a company, you try to understand what are the areas of interest that what could be the projects that there could be also strategic for themselves. And when a project is strategic for themselves and is strategic for us, is when the collaboration flows as a river. The collaboration really works very well. And yes, we put all this expertise in a tool that is called Lucy, because we had a lot of companies, a lot of people approaching to us and telling us, why don't you help us to create our open innovation platform, our crowdsourcing platform? And we, being completely honest, we didn't have time. But then in an area of the company that is called HTT Labs that works in things that are related to Hyperloop, but also other things that we could sell outside of the Hyperloop environment, we created this platform. And right now we are in the process of spinning off that company that will have his own personality and will help other companies, other startups, other big corporations, even public administrations, to create open innovation and to create a crowdsourcing collaboration.
Yeah, this could be also one additional topic. Thank you for that. I really like the deal. And coming back to Hyperloop now, you also said so HyperloopTT understands itself, it's rather like a technology company and not like a construction provider company. So basically you work out the whole concept, the whole technology.
No, our business model is to be a technology developer. We are Hyperloop as a service, basically. So we will be licensing the technology to the infrastructure operators, companies like Deutsche Bahn, SNCF, talk about public companies, or companies like Vinci, Ferrovial, ACS, private companies that today are operators of toll roads or of rail systems, could be the perfect partners, to be the infrastructure operators. And like it's happening right now in the high-speed rail, they will be sending the slots to different transportation companies. No, in Spain we have Renfe, we have Oigo, we have that. But even airlines, why not? At the end of the day, a capsule in a vacuum environment is like an airplane without wings. No, so if your business is moving passengers, is moving people, you can be a transportation operator. Say, if you are UPS, you are FedEx, and you are moving freight and parcels and units and all that, you can be also a freight operator on an Hyperloop system.
You mentioned before, like the three chapters of the company. The first chapter was to develop the technology. What was the biggest challenge, or what was the most crucial technology you applied?
Well, I think that definitely the propulsion and levitation, having a propulsion and levitation technology that makes sense and that works and that is economically viable and that reduces drastically the risk. And we have different levels, you can go from the most sophisticated one and the most different to what you are seeing today to something that is more like passive magnetic levitation, but with some concepts of the maglev and all that. We have tried always to be very pragmatic and to have our feet in the ground. Okay, it's not just innovation by innovation. Innovation is always a trade-off of doing something new, but doing something new that makes sense. Okay, and a lot of times the innovation is in the small details and in the small changes that you can do to existing technologies to apply to other systems. So I'd say that probably that, and then communications. When you are moving things in a vacuum environment at a high speed, there are some big challenges, with the communication system. Okay.
And what about the famous important topic about safety in the Hyperloop pods?
At the end, the safety topic is not different than what you have in an airplane or you have in a high-speed rail. We developed it with TÜV more than 3 years or 4 years ago, a complete regulatory guideline. We did a complete risk analysis with Munich Re, the biggest reinsurance company in the world, one of the biggest, if not the biggest. TÜV is a safety and certification agency, and ISA, and they help us to create this regulatory environment to be shared with the European Commission, with the Department of Transportation, to do all the analysis of the different safety cases. Nothing different than when you are developing a new airplane or when you are developing a new train or a new system. So at the end of the day, and also one thing that we need to understand, and this is a great advantage of the Hyperloop, independently that you have to do a complete safety analysis, you need to be CL4, you need to, all that engineering points, that are important. But from a very simple point of view, you need to think that Hyperloop is very safe by design, okay? And why is very safe by design? And again, let's go to comparison. If you got a problem moving the Hyperloop, you are not 10,000 feet, on the air. You are on the ground, okay? And then when you compare with high-speed rail, the tube is a huge protection. A lot of the accidents that you have today in the rail system has to do with external interactions. Somebody crossing the line in a moment, the truck, I remember seeing a video of one camel in the Medina Mecca line, in the middle of the line. So all that problems, you take it away. And you are in a closed environment. And that closed environment is immune to external interactions and immune to weather. That weather is also a big problem, that. So you can control perfectly.
I'm reading a lot. If you're just putting Hyperloop into the net, what are the costs? I mean, there are between recently read between 80 millions and 100 millions per kilometer. This is more or less what our construction cost could be. Is this like a feasible assumption of costs?
No, the definitely is much less than that. We're talking between 20 to 40 million. Of course, in the first 10 kilometers, you have the prototyping, you have the engineering, the advancement, the testing, the certificate. It has nothing to do. The cost of the first 10 kilometers and this project is 100 million, but because it's not just, the construction, okay? It's much more. And also you don't have the economies of scale and all that. But in all the analysis that we have done, you are moving between 20 to 40 million. But again, the most important thing is not the cost per kilometer. The most important thing is the payback period, because you have very low maintenance costs because you are in a closed environment, because you have also, so the external factors are a big key driver of the cost, for maintenance, because you don't have energy costs, because you are fully automated, so your labor cost is also very low and all that. You can arrive to that, and because you have a high frequency and you can adapt your operations, because you are moving every time only 40 people, so you could be putting one capsule in the tube every minute in the high peak, but then you could, outside of the high peak, one every 15 minutes with people, and it's still giving a good service, So one of the biggest problems also sometimes is what happened with the trains that goes out of the peak hour, with the availability of that and the occupancy.
Absolutely.
So for a lot of reasons, you have a system that is much more cost effective. And because it's a smaller infrastructure, there was one day we were in a conference and I was presenting, and it was a panel. And I had close to me one engineer for one one of the big rail companies in Europe, that he was a big fan of the Hyperloop, actually. He was even bigger fan than myself, And he was explaining that one of the biggest advantages of the Hyperloop also is that because it's a smaller infrastructure and because you are levitating, you have more the capacity to attack more gradients, and you have the curves that you need less radius for the curves. So altogether, basically, it's an infrastructure that you can adapt better for the terrain, not like high-speed rail that you need to go viaduct tunnel when you arrive to a mountain area, and that's very expensive. So he was explaining that, saying Hyperloop is like an old highway that can be around the mountains, and that can reduce also drastically the cost of the capex and all that. So anyway, altogether, at the end, is a much logical and interesting value proposition from a finance point of view that the actual rail system.
Chicago to Pittsburgh. I think it's more than 400 miles and should be done in a little bit more than 1 hour. What was actually the outcome of this paper? Was it yes, let's do it, or?
It was very, very positive. Actually, well, first of all, it's the first feasibility study that was done in the US and in the world, probably following the public procurement. Well, in the world, no, because we had Abu Dhabi and first. Following the public procurement rules and everything, and following the model and the transportation model of the Federal Railroad of the Department of Transportation in the United States, and was also done by an independent source and was reviewed by peers. And at the end, they arrived to that conclusions that that the system make economical sense. And we're talking about something that, could have a payback period, if I don't remember badly, in that case was between 23 to 25 years, So very, very positive. And we were talking about that the cost of the travel in comparison with other modes of transport was like 75% for the travel, for the final user.
So the cheapest and the fastest way to get from Chicago to Pittsburgh. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Another project, you mentioned it before already, the cooperation with Hamburg Port for their Hyperloop application. And when I talk to especially if we talk about containers, and Hamburg is well known for containers, like a lot of people then say, what does it make sense to boost like 2 containers with a speed of 1,000 kilometers per hour through Europe in hours when they just sit and rest like 10 weeks on the vessel from China to Hamburg? So what is their business case, especially if we talk about transporting containers, for example, in the hinterland?
Yeah, well, I think that is a legitimate analysis, but completely wrong because they don't they don't see the big picture. No, when we did this cooperation, we were more than 2 years working together with HADA. HADA has this HCSS that it is one of the biggest consultant in port operations in the world, and one of the most reputed one, if not the most reputed one. And we did, we had 3 different teams. There was one team that was working from a point of view of engineering, other team from the point of view of operations, another team that was trying to answer these questions, about the commercial viability of this. And yes, of course, if you think about the container has been 2 weeks in the water and then arrives to Hamburg, and I need to put it in Munich, it doesn't matter if it is 1 day, 2 days, or if it is that. But I think that they are not taking in consideration the whole. One of the biggest problems that you have right now in the ports all around the world is landlocked. Okay, you don't have land, and even more important than that, the land that you are using the land in an incredible location that, from a real estate point of view, could be amazing, for the city. And it's not only that, you are creating traffic jams, you are created a lot of contamination around the port, you have a lot of trucks going and going in and going out of the port and all of that. So let's start to imagine, okay? Let's start from the beginning, from the very typical business case. You are a port, you have no option to grow. The only option you have to grow, is if you want to, because you are surrounded by the city, that's where they are. So what if we put an inland port 50, 75 kilometers inside, okay, where you are going to move your containers, and basically you are going to move everything to that inland port with an hyperport system of 70 kilometers that the container arrives, you unload the container, put it in the hyperport, send it to your inland port 70 kilometers away, okay? And then you solve the problem of the landlock. And then the port, maybe you need 1/4 of the space. And then you can start to sell amazing places in front of the sea, in the middle of the city, or close to the city, to people, to live there. That is a much more logical use of the space in front of the beach, than having ports. That's one possibility, yeah. One port. But then when you continue thinking about it, you say, well, if I'm going to move it 70 kilometers for similar cost, I can move it 400, 500 kilometers. So now imagine that the goods are coming to Hamburg, and you are moving everything to the center of Germany. So now you are in the center. Or let's put the example of Spain, that is a radial country. Things arrive to Valencia, and you move it to Zaragoza, or you move it to Madrid, to the logistics center there. And then you have everything in the middle. Basically, that's a business case that makes a lot of sense and that can reduce drastically the cost. But even more, let's keep thinking, what about the long haul? One of the biggest problems you have in the United States is you are a SME, you are a small company, and you need to serve, you are in the East Coast, and you need to serve West Coast. The only way to do it today is to give a good service is to have a warehouse also in the West Coast. But in this scenario, why? You could move containers from New York to Los Angeles, in hours,
yeah. 3-4 hours.
You don't need to have that. So long distance, Silk Road, all the big possibilities that you have, connecting the Mediterranean with the Atlantic, So yes, definitely you are not going to have Hyperport in all the cases, but Hyperloop also is not going to solve all the problems, of the world. So, but there are business cases, there are user cases that make a lot of sense for Hyperport, the same that for Hyperloop.
I don't know if you know the company Cargo Souterrain in Switzerland. They're also making small tubes, but they're transporting for the last mile services directly city centers. And what I really like on the approach, Dominic also said, like, it's a combination of the other mode of transport. So it's not a question of I do A or B. It's a combination of A, B, and C. So let's put together Hyperloop, let's put together rail, let's put together the vessel operators in order to have a good, like a very strong world of mobility for cargo and passenger. Because at the end of the day, this is the whole integration of the modes. Also for me to understand, like, because especially in Europe, we're talking a lot about capacity, especially on the railway, on the track. So basically, you can, what you mentioned before, you can shoot every minute like a pod through the tube, right? So there is not really a limitation in that.
Our model is to shoot one capsule every 40 seconds, but right now we are more in every minute, to be prudent, okay? But we think that it's possible, and we analyze it from the beginning, to shoot a capsule every 40 seconds with different locations of the capsule, where the people embark and disembark, from different areas, okay? So you unload and load the capsule every 7 minutes, and you put a capsule in the tube every 40 seconds, okay? In peak hour, of course, because when you are out of peak hour, probably you don't need that. You need to give a service as a demand, no? Depending on when the people needs to move and how many people you have in the station, you launch a capsule, okay? You can be very, very flexible, and that flexibility is one of the biggest advantage of the Hyperloop too.
Great. And when I talked to Nevoma with Stefan, what I really liked the approach, I think what we see here, it's depending on what you mentioned as well before, it's depending on the application where which, let's put it, the technology makes sense. So if you're just connecting 200 kilometers, then probably the rail, then conventional would be the best solution in order to apply. If you go even further and faster, maybe the system of Nevomo could pay off. And if you go for really long distances, then with the higher than speed of sound, then the Hyperloop could make sense.
Yeah, well, on that one, and without trying to be combative with our friend, our common friend, it's true. Of course, if you connect Madrid-Barcelona by high-speed rail, it's good enough. But if you connect Madrid-Paris and you pass through Barcelona, and then you need to decide if you want to do Madrid-Barcelona in 2.5 hours or in half an hour, probably everybody will take the Hyperloop, So I think that it's more about what are the main alignments, that make sense, okay? So I think that that's the key point here, no? What are the main alignments that make sense?
And if you look just in the year 2050, how the mobility world, especially with Hyperloop, would look like?
Well, I think that right now the project in Italy is key. Once we are able to show and demonstrate that the 10 kilometers works for 2028 to 2030, there's going to be a huge demand of systems around the world, of governments, local governments, regional governments that are going to be interested about this, private sector that will be also interested. So I can see that in the next 20 years, from 2030 to 2050, we can have a very, very fast deployment of the technology. And will be fast because, as I explained before, we don't need to develop ourselves the capabilities. We don't need to deploy the capital. We don't need to develop the capabilities. There are a lot of companies, that are experts in that field that can be our customers, our partners, our strategic partners in the commercialization. So I think that there are still opportunities for the big alignments and for the big routes in Europe, connecting the big cities of Europe. I think that that's really a possibility. I also think that United States needs to do something, okay? They cannot continue like they are with just highways and airplanes and all that. They really need to take the revolution of rail. They are starting to do it. High-speed rail is great, but I don't think that is the right system for the United States because the distance are so long normally, so big, Um, and I think that other areas of the world, like the Middle East, of Australia, are also great opportunities for Hyperloop systems. So how many Hyperloop systems we will see from on 2050 up and running? Difficult to say. No? Could be 10, could be 20, could be 200. No? Who knows? It's impossible to say that. But definitely, I think that at least we could be seeing in 2050, why not 20 systems, up and running of an Hyperloop, okay, or even more. Because again, the point here is that there is not a bottleneck, okay? The technology will be there, we will license the technology, and different companies will be able to develop their own system, their own projects.
And you said we will see. If you talk about is the technology of Hyperloop, what Hyperloop TT is developing, unique, or are there also other, are there competitors, or is that just the one and only solution for Hyperloop? Will, under the theme, the winner takes it all, this will be then the standard for everyone? Because what I also read is that most of the other Hyperloop companies, most of them already stopped going further or closed. So is the Hyperloop TT, the technology, the best one, or are there also other companies?
Definitely, because this has been a long race of 10 years. There has been some companies that has disappeared. Like Hyperloop One, it's a very clear example that they were in the race for 10 years and then at the end they decided to close operations. Okay, I think that Hyperloop TT, if you ask me, of course, I'm going to tell you that our technology is the best technology, But even more important that it's the best technology, I think that it's the technology that is more advanced, and that's why we have been able to present the offer of the 7 pre-qualified candidates, for the tender. We were the only ones really capable to present a real offer and to be able to take the commitment to go to this project in Italy. And that's because we are much more advanced in terms of technology and much more advanced in terms of product definition. It's not only the technology, it's the technology and the product. I'm sure that some of our colleagues have some areas of their technology that could be interesting and that we could analyze in the future and all of that. I know that there will be a Chinese Hyperloop, and that has nothing to do with Hyperloop TT. So that's going to happen. It's happening already. Okay. So Europe and America, we better hurry up because, we don't want also to depend on China also for the future Hyperloops. So this is happening, okay? So we are gonna see a Chinese Hyperloop. We are gonna see the Hyperloop TT system. There are other companies that are a little bit smaller in terms of, or a little bit less advanced, I believe. But anyway, I don't want to. But they are doing good efforts, And now we have been in Holland that there is this Hyperloop Center, that they are opening to, that is similar to what we had in Toulouse before. So, that will help them also to develop their own technology. And I'm sure that at the end, this will be a mix, but right now, I would say that definitely we are leading the race, and we are the company that has a more, let's say, experienced technology. Let's put it on this way. But that doesn't mean that we are the better in everything. No, it's impossible in life to be the best one in everything. I'm sure that there will be part of the technology that our colleagues are doing better than us. Okay.
If you would be the Commissioner of Transport in Europe, what would be your headline for the future in terms of mobility and rail?
Well, I think that if I would be the Commissioner of Transport in Europe, I would start to put serious money on the Hyperloop industry. Okay, that's definitely is something that I would do, because the last thing that I want is that all the revolution, once again, we lose the opportunity. No? We have lost too many opportunities in Europe in the last 40 years. Okay, we are seeing how some of our industries are suffering because we are not being able to protect it and to help them and to that. And and here there is not Hyperloop in Europe is not only a question of transportation; it's also a question. It's an economical vector. Okay, it's a social economical. Is the social economical impact that could have developing an industry, and it's about industry policy. No, so and how do I see the European field in terms of mobility? Definitely in 20 years, I see it very different than what we are seeing today. Okay, I think that everybody understands that there are a lot of things that needs to change and that are changing, but probably not fast enough. If you ask me, not fast enough. It's not like, look, we have a lot of support. We have this project in Italy, so nothing to complain, no? But I'd love to have 3 or 4 more projects of Hyperloop being developed in Europe. Yes, I love to have that.
You're located right now in Dubai, especially the Emirates, and this area is also well known for a lot of new technology, and especially with the environment, the sand environment, the whole topic of vacuum levitation tube absolutely makes sense. Is there also one application planned in this area?
Yeah, definitely. Pandemic stopped everything a little bit, but then right now with the Italian project, we have restarted conversations in the area, and we expect that Middle East, or some of the countries in the Middle East, we hope that they will be able to be in the first wave. Okay.
So Andres, we talked about a lot now about the Hyperloop, but I'm also quite interested about the people behind such initiatives. May I just ask you, how comes that you joined the initiative of the Hyperloop, and who are you, and can you tell us a little bit more about you?
Okay. Well, I joined the initiative basically because the founder is some person that I worked with him one long time ago when I was working in the biomass industry, in the renewable energy industry. And when he called me and he explained me about the project, I basically fell in love with the project. I thought that was a great opportunity for doing something meaningful for the world, for our kids, I have 3 children, and I thought that I really needed to take some action, and I fell in love not only with the project, but also with the way that we were building the project, okay? And one of the things that I'm more proud is our team and how we have developed this new way of building companies. So Hyperloop is important, but it's also very important to give a message to the world that through intensive collaboration, through crowdsourcing, we are able to solve some of the biggest challenges that we have now. And who am I? I define myself like a hard worker, working since I was 19 years old. I was in the university and I was already working in the financial department of a construction company. I've been leading companies all around the world in different countries, always very focused in the infrastructure, in product development, in technology, industrial projects. And I'm very, very worried about climate change and about everything that has to do with renewable energy, new modes of transportation, and technologies that can help us to avoid this climate disaster that we are going on.
Yeah, but Andres, that's some really good closing words, because I think if you do it with passion and if you fell in love, I'd like to protect the planet by making a sustainable mode of transport. I think that's the perfect way to do it, and the perfect way how to shape the ecosystem also of rail. So thank you very much, Andres, that you joined RailUp, and welcome to the RailUp Club. It was a really great pleasure talking to you. And yeah, I'm very much excited to meet you then in Venice one time.
Thank you very much to you for giving me the opportunity to explain our journey, and to acknowledge the work of all our team and our contributors and our collaborators in this project.
What is the contribution to drive climate change?
Well, I guess that working on the Hyperloop, and trying to develop a transportation system that is fully sustainable from the point of view of operations is carbon emissions neutral. And we are also working on trying to use Hyperloop as an opportunity to develop not only the technology for the Hyperloop, but everything that is related in the value chain, to do it in a way that we can reduce the carbon emissions.
The ball is in your court. What is the next step to drive change?
I think that exactly the same that the companies has the obligation to present a financial balance sheet and a financial profit and loss, we should have a sustainability or ESG, not only sustainability, an ESG balance sheet and an ESG profit and loss. So I think there is a lot of initiatives about that. And I think that if we are able to develop a new accountant, of how do we account for the effect of the company in their environment, that would be really, really helpful to stop with all these greenwashing scenarios that we are seeing sometimes, and making sure that the financial world, instead of talking about it, they really act about it. Everybody's talking about investing in companies and in projects, that has to do with climate change and that can help us to reduce climate change. But the reality is completely different. All the ones that we are trying to develop this kind of technologies, we know how difficult it is to have the support from the financial world on these kind of projects, really.
Which superhero do we need to avoid the climate disaster?
Well, I think that we don't need superheroes. I think that we need collaboration of a lot of people, no? I think that basically this is like a big orchestra where, we need every single one playing well his instrument, and we need the people working together to try to solve. And like always, there is not a silver bullet, okay? There is not a silver bullet that can solve all the problems. We need a lot of actions, a lot of initiatives, a lot of projects, and we need everybody being involved and collaborating like we have been collaborating in the Hyperloop field.
What's the takeaway from this episode?
My key takeaway from this episode is the innovative way to found a new company using the approach of crowdsourcing. HyperloopTT is a perfect showcase of how global knowledge and expertise can be bundled to create new technologies and later on converted into company equity. I was also fascinated by the first full-scale feasibility study, which showed that a Hyperloop connection could be the fastest, cheapest and most sustainable way to travel, for example, from Chicago to Pittsburgh. This great untapped potential likely resulted in an €800 million public-private partnership project in Europe to construct the first full-scale connection between Venice and Padua. We heard from Andrés that HyperloopTT sees itself as a technology company that enables various parties to construct and operate Hyperloop systems globally. I'm already excited about visiting the team in Venice to see the first Hyperloop commercial stretch being constructed. This is what RAILUP is all about, thinking in new ways and creating real-life solutions to shape the ecosystem of mobility. Welcome to the RAILUP Club.
This podcast connects innovators and leaders worldwide to shape the future ecosystem of rail. Rail Up by Sebastian Sperker.